It's Friday, 14th of August, 2026. Welcome back to your news update on Blip Brief, crisp, but almost everything updated every market trading day.
Let's get right into it.
Yeah, so today you are looking at a really bizarre paradox. Um, right at the heart of the Indian economy, we are absolutely crushing it on the global stage.
Right. Exporting high-tech engineering goods like never before.
Exactly. But then if you walk into your local mandi this morning, you are paying this massive, eye-watering premium just to buy onions.
It is a staggering contrast, honestly.
It really is. How exactly can we be winning the global tech and manufacturing war, but somehow losing the battle for your domestic kitchen budget? We're going to jump straight into the foundational health of the economy today because that contrast between our global performance and the squeeze happening in your wallet is, frankly, it's wild.
It is. And we should definitely start with the global front.
Right, so Indian goods exports just jumped by nearly a fifth. We are looking at an almost 20% surge here.
Which is hitting the steepest growth pace we have seen in over 4 years.
Yeah, and this is being driven heavily by engineering goods and electronics, which is, I mean, it's incredibly resilient considering the ongoing geopolitical crisis and, the massive disruptions in West Asia.
It is a remarkable display of export muscle, particularly for those engineering sectors.
Yeah.
And this is a big bite, but while those export percentages look fantastic on the surface, if you actually dig into the trade data, the overall merchandise trade gap actually widened.
Wait, it widened, even with a 20% export jump.
Yeah, exactly. The reason is pretty simple, actually. Our total imports grew at an even faster pace than those booming exports.
Okay, wow.
Though there is a very interesting detail hidden in that import data. Edible oil imports actually declined by nearly 10%,
Oh, really?
specifically dropping 8%. So the import surge is not coming from, agricultural or food dependencies, but the overall import volume across other sectors is still massive enough to widen that deficit.
Okay, let's unpack this. If you look at the Indian economy right now, it feels like a two-speed engine, right?
What is a great way to put it?
We are revving incredibly hard on global exports, successfully capturing market share in tech and engineering. But the engine it is sputtering violently when it comes to the domestic kitchen budget.
Yeah, the retail side is rough.
Retail and food inflation are climbing steadily. Just to give you a prime example of how this is hitting the ground level, wholesale onion prices surged by a massive 25% in just a single week.
A single week, that is huge.
So I have to ask, are we effectively managing these massive global headwinds but totally losing the battle at the local level, at the local mandi?
What's fascinating here is that the impressive export numbers actually mask the underlying vulnerability of that widening trade deficit. The surge in engineering and electronics exports, well, it proves that the relentless global demand for Indian manufacturing is real.
Right. People want our stuff.
Exactly. We are successfully positioning ourselves in the global supply chain shift.
Hmm.
However, that localized inflation you were feeling at the grocery store, that is spiking because of severe, highly localized weather events.
Oh, the heavy rains.
Yeah, the heavy rains and highly fragmented supply chain disruptions. They have severely crippled the domestic agricultural output of key crops.
Which perfectly explains that sudden 25% spike in onion prices. I mean, the supply just vanishes. But surely the central bank can step in here. Like, why doesn't the RBI intervene to ease the pressure on the consumer?
Because it is a supply-driven shock, not a demand-driven one. And this puts the Reserve Bank of India in a highly complex position.
How so?
Well, the RBI is forced to maintain a tight monetary stance. They cannot easily cut interest rates to spur broader domestic growth when food inflation is consistently threatening to spill over into broader, generalized inflation.
Ah, I see. Because if everyday items cost more.
Exactly. If food costs more, people demand higher wages, which then increases corporate costs, and that leads to higher prices across the board.
The classic inflation spiral.
Right. So the RBI has to keep liquidity tight in the banking system to prevent those localized agricultural price spikes from altering general inflation expectations. Even while, the export sector proves it can compete aggressively on the world stage.
Okay, that perfectly sets up our next massive contradiction. Because while you, the macro consumer, might be feeling the pinch of food inflation, corporate India is telling a surprisingly different story.
A completely different story, yeah.
If the average household budget is squeezed, who is driving the massive consumption boom we're seeing in very specific corporate sectors? At the same time, our traditional legacy conglomerates they're aggressively pivoting toward the future. Let us look at the auto sector first, because it is absolutely roaring.
It really is.
Factory sales of passenger vehicles surged over a third. We are talking a 34% jump. Two-wheelers jumped nearly a quarter at 23%, and three-wheelers grew a full third, up 33%.
Those percentages are staggering, especially when you contrast them with the food inflation data we just discussed.
Right. How do those two things exist at the same time?
What you are witnessing is a clear, undeniable bifurcation in the consumer base. This auto boom is heavily driven by improved affordability and rising wages exclusively in higher income brackets.
Ah, so it's the premium segment that is flying.
Exactly. Furthermore, there is a massive structural shift happening beneath the surface here, a huge spike in demand for CNG vehicles.
Really? CNG?
Yeah, consumers who are buying cars are actively shifting toward models that offer much better long-term running costs. It is completely changing the sales mix and forcing manufacturers to pivot their production lines.
Wait, so the top-tier consumer is buying cars, checking their running costs, but what about the broader corporate space? Because corporate earnings and deep tech investments are showing serious momentum right now, too.
Absolutely.
Like General Insurance Corporation of India or GIC Re, they just saw their profits jump nearly 10%. And that was driven by significantly improved claims and underwriting performance. But, and this is a real headline grabber in the corporate space today, Larsen & Toubro, L&T just secured a historic order to build India's largest NVIDIA artificial intelligence factory.
Yeah, that L&T order is a pivotal moment for the Indian economy.
It's massive.
It reflects corporate India's urgent and massive pivot to capitalize on the global AI infrastructure gold rush. For a long time, the AI conversation was purely about software.
Right, coding and algorithms.
But you have to remember, AI requires massive physical infrastructure.
Oh, like data centers.
Specialized cooling systems, enormous power grid connections, reinforced data centers, exactly. L&T is not just participating in the software ecosystem. They are securing the contracts to build the heavy, complex physical infrastructure required to actually train these massive AI models.
Which brings us directly to the boardrooms of some of India's oldest conglomerates, where this high-tech future is actively colliding with century-old legacy structures. We have two major succession stories playing out right now that basically dictate the future of Indian capital.
Right, Godrej and Tata.
Yeah. Pirojsha Godrej is taking over Godrej Industries, and he is coming in with a very clear, highly aggressive mandate to scale up valuations across their businesses. Meanwhile, over at Tata, things are infinitely more complicated. Tata Trusts is currently weighing urgent legal moves to ensure that the Sureshra Tata Trust maintains its crucial voting power as they begin the highly anticipated search for the next Tata Sons chairman successor.
The contrast there is fascinating.
Here's where it gets really interesting. You can look at India's legacy conglomerates exactly like legacy software operating systems that are in desperate need of urgent updates, right?
Like that analogy.
Over at Godrej, they realize the market is moving fast, so they are installing a fast, aggressive, new leadership patch to drive growth. But over at Tata, they are currently stuck in a highly complex legal debugging phase just to figure out who actually gets admin access before they can even think about the next software update.
That is spot on. And this raises an important question regarding how traditional Indian capital is being reallocated and managed for the 21st century.
How do you mean?
Well, if you look at Godrej bringing in younger, aggressive leadership, intensely focused on valuation multiples, and then compare it to L&T, a traditional heavy engineering giant making a massive deep tech bet on an AI factory, a very clear theme emerges.
They are terrified of being left behind.
Exactly. Traditional engineering and consumer giants are actively hedging their legacy businesses. They know that what got them here over the last 50 years will not keep them relevant for the next 10.
Right, the old playbook is dead.
So they have to reallocate vast amounts of capital into deep tech infrastructure and radically modernize their governance structures just to survive.
Okay, so if corporate India is sinking billions into deep tech and aggressively restructuring their leadership, how is institutional money reacting to all this? Like, where is the smart money actually placing its bets right now?
That is where the markets are totally ignoring the old rules.
Yeah, let us shift our focus to the equity and debt markets because the capital flows right now are completely ignoring those traditional playbooks.
Yeah.
Top foreign portfolio investors completely outran the benchmark Nifty and Sensex indices in the first quarter.
They really did.
They generated massive returns, and they did this despite all the widespread panic surrounding the Iran geopolitical crisis.
The outperformance by those foreign funds is incredibly revealing about the current market mechanics.
How did they manage to beat the indices so badly?
They managed to beat the broader market because they essentially abandoned traditional index tracking strategies. Instead of buying the top 50 or 100 biggest companies, they aggressively picked specific mid-cap and small-cap stocks.
Just going straight past the blue chips?
Exactly. They realized that the large-cap space was fully priced, so they took on significantly more risk further down the market capitalization curve to generate those outsized returns.
Hold on, let me challenge you on that for a second. Isn't that incredibly reckless right now? We just spent the first segment talking about severe localized inflation, weather shocks destroying crops, and a squeezed domestic consumer.
Right.
Why would foreign money deliberately bypass safe, highly capitalized large caps and take on the specific risks of smaller, vulnerable companies during an active global geopolitical crisis?
That is exactly the right question to ask. And the answer is they are taking that risk because they simply have no other choice if they want to generate alpha.
No other choice.
Think about it. The large cap stocks are heavily saturated by domestic money. If foreign funds want to justify their management fees, they have to dig deep into the mid and small cap sectors where institutional research is thinner.
Ah, looking for the hidden gems.
Right, where they can find specialized companies, perhaps those heavily exposed to the exact export boom or AI infrastructure build-out we just discussed, that are entirely shielded from those domestic agricultural shocks.
Okay, that makes sense. And speaking of where money is forced to go, the MSCI India Index is undergoing a significant reshuffle right now. For you as an investor, this matters deeply because global passive funds are essentially robotic.
They just follow the code.
Yeah. When MSCI changes its index, those funds are blindly forced to buy or sell. They are adding major players like Lenskart, Grow, and Adani Energy. This move marginally increases India's overall weight in the global index, which automatically forces billions in passive global capital to allocate directly into these newly added stocks.
Precisely. It is automatic structural capital flow. But while the equity markets are seeing this aggressive maneuvering, the debt and currency markets are telling a story of extreme control and scarcity.
Extreme control.
Yeah. In the currency markets, the rupee held perfectly steady. But in the debt markets, we are seeing a massive structural shift. Demand for long-tenured government securities, commonly known as GSECs, is surging heavily among domestic institutional investors, particularly the EPFO and major life insurers.
Okay, wait, I love looking at the market mechanics this way, so let us break down what is actually happening behind the scenes here. It is exactly like the RBI is acting as a very strict bouncer at a nightclub.
A very strict bouncer.
They are heavily controlling the door, actively selling dollars, and managing the flow of capital so the rupee doesn't fluctuate wildly and cause panic inside the club.
Right.
Meanwhile, the foreign portfolio investors are the VIPs who walk in, look around, and realize the main floor, the large cap stocks, is way too crowded with local retail investors. So they bypass the main floor entirely and head straight for the exclusive high-risk lounge, the mid and small caps, to find the better action.
That is a perfect analogy for the equity and currency side. But let us apply it to the debt market, where that surging demand for long-tenured GSECs is happening.
Okay, how does the bouncer fit into the debt market?
Well, this is a function of pure, severe supply and demand mechanics. Institutional investors, like pension funds and insurers, have a strict mandate to match their long-term liabilities, like your retirement payouts 30 years from now, with long-term safe assets.
Right, they need to know the money will be there.
Exactly. But right now, there is a severe scarcity of equivalent long-term corporate bonds being issued in the market.
Wait, why is there a scarcity? If corporations like L&T are building massive AI factories, shouldn't they be issuing long-term debt to fund it?
You would think so, but corporations are currently utilizing internal accruals or opting for much shorter-term borrowing.
Why short-term?
Because of the exact tight liquidity conditions maintained by the RBI that we discussed earlier. With no high-quality corporate paper available to buy, these massive institutional funds are forced to pour all that capital strictly into long-term government securities, relentlessly driving up demand and compressing yields.
Wow, so they literally have nowhere else to park the cash.
Exactly. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it perfectly illustrates the ultimate structural shift that has occurred in Indian markets over the last few years. Historically, if foreign investors pulled their money out, the Indian indices would crash.
Right. Total panic.
But today, domestic institutional investors, driven by the relentless monthly SIP flows coming directly from your own savings and millions of other retail investors, they are pouring so much continuous capital into the market that foreign selling is easily absorbed.
The retail investor is the whale now.
The domestic money is the new baseline. Because of this massive domestic shock absorber, FPIs can no longer just buy the top index names and expect outperformance. They are forced to work much harder, deploy active management, and take on the specific granular risks of smaller companies to generate any meaningful advantage.
It really is a totally new paradigm for how global money has to operate here. You, the retail investor, have essentially become the anchor of the entire market.
It's a huge shift in power. It really is.
Yeah.
Now, we have spent this update talking about terrestrial infrastructure, supply chains, AI factories, and complex market data. But we have to close out with a truly fascinating story from our sources about how existing space infrastructure is being hacked, for lack of a better term, to gather entirely new, critical planetary data.
This is an absolutely brilliant piece of scientific ingenuity.
Tell me about it.
So, researchers have discovered a way to turn a massive commercial satellite constellation, specifically the Starlink network, into a giant crowdsourced atmospheric scanner.
Wait, Starlink? Like the internet satellites?
Yes, they are utilizing the continuous orbital data from a massive chunk of these commercial internet satellites to successfully map the Earth's upper atmosphere.
Okay, so what does this all mean? How does a commercial satellite designed to beam internet to your house suddenly become a highly sensitive weather and atmospheric mapping tool?
Well, the upper atmosphere is notoriously difficult and incredibly expensive to observe using dedicated scientific satellites.
I imagine it's pretty chaotic up there. Exactly. The environment is harsh, and building custom equipment takes years and massive budgets. But here's the genius part. Even in the upper atmosphere, there are microscopic air molecules.
Okay.
As these commercial Starlink satellites orbit at incredibly high speeds, they encounter tiny, almost microscopic drag forces from that incredibly thin air.
Oh, wow.
This drag causes minute, almost imperceptible variations in their signals and their exact orbital positioning.
It is honestly mind-blowing. It is exactly like using millions of everyday smartphones to track global traffic patterns on Google Maps.
That's a great comparison.
Because your phone isn't a dedicated traffic sensor, but by analyzing exactly how fast it is moving down the highway, Google algorithms know exactly where the traffic jams are. These scientists are doing the exact same thing, but applied to the very edge of space. They are analyzing the traffic drag on commercial satellites.
Exactly. By crowdsourcing and analyzing these tiny signal variations across thousands of satellites simultaneously, scientists can extract high-resolution, real-time data on atmospheric density and space weather.
Without launching anything new.
Right. They are gathering incredibly valuable scientific data without having to launch a single piece of new, expensive scientific equipment. They are simply reading the interference patterns of existing commercial technology.
That is just incredibly smart.
The implications for how we gather data are profound. And it leaves you with a final thought to mull over today as you go about your business.
Oh, what's that?
Building on this idea of repurposing existing signals, another recent scientific discovery from our sources revealed that ordinary, everyday Wi-Fi networks, the exact same ones you have in your home or office right now, can now be used to identify human beings moving through a room with near-perfect accuracy.
Wait, without cameras?
Entirely without the use of any cameras. It works simply by analyzing the disruption and scattering of the radio waves as a human body moves through the signal path.
That is slightly terrifying.
It is. So if commercial tech in space can accidentally map the edge of the atmosphere just by flying through it, what hidden data patterns are our terrestrial networks secretly mapping about you right now, just by analyzing how you walk through your own living room?
And just before you go, a quick note, this deep dive commentary was put together using advanced AI. We always strive for accuracy, but please do cross-verify any crucial information yourself. Your informed decisions are what matter most. The content shared here is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be treated as investment or trading advice. Past performance is not indicative of future returns. We are not licensed financial advisors.